Am I the a-hole for telling my husband when I left the bar? I 34F been married to my husband 35M for almost a year now, and we dated for 3 years before. Ever since we started dating, whenever we go out without the other, we both let each other know where are we, and when we arrive, leave as a safety thing. Example, hey, I arrived to X bar, everything fine, or hey, I'm leaving the bar on an Uber, should be home in 10 min. Now, this weekend, I went out with my friend, Amy, not real name. We went to a restaurant and to dance. Around 2 a.m., we decide to go home, and because we live in opposite directions, we each took a different Uber. As usual, I texted my husband to let him know I was going home, and he told me that he was also leaving his friend's house and we should arrive at the same time. I knew that he was out with some of his friends that included Amy's fiancé, and we all know each other for a long time, but I wasn't really thinking about that, just following my routine. We both got home. I texted Amy to let her know I was home safe and went to bed. When I woke up the next morning, I had tons of messages and a few missed calls from Amy. My husband had also some messages and calls from Amy's fiancé. In her text, she was asking me what I had told her fiancé, what had my husband told to the fiancé, how dare we meddle in their relationship, etc. The texts on my husband's phone were just asking if I had arrived home and if had any idea where Amy was. I called Amy, and she, again, asked what had I told her fiancé. I told her I haven't spoke with him, and she called me an asshole and a liar, because if didn't spoke to him, how did he know I had left at 2 a.m.? I explained to her that I had texted my husband as I always do. She said, I'm an asshole for not telling her that I was doing that, and that my husband is a controlling asshole for making me text him and for telling her fiancé that she was also leaving. Then she hung up and haven't picked up again. My husband said he only told his friends that he was leaving because he wanted to arrive at home at the same time as me, and that if my friend did something, I don't know what, that's on her, not me. The thing is, this has reached my other friends, and some are saying that I should text my husband when I arrive home, not when I leave the club, and that I am an asshole for not telling Amy what I was texting my husband. Some agree with my husband and say this is on Amy for lying. She said we both stay dancing even later, and not on my for texting my husband. Honestly, I don't know what to think, as I feel like maybe I should just text my husband arriving home instead to avoid compromising others or to avoid creating an imaginary curfew for my friends. So Reddit, am I the asshole? Now for the updates. Update 1. Hello Reddit. It's been quite a week. After seeing all the answers, I decided to make the first and only update about this. I haven't heard Amy's version of what happened during that hour and a half she was missing, but her fiancé told my husband that everything is fine and that the reason she was late was because she decided to walk home while smoking and didn't want him to know and be disappointed she's smoking again. As of the wedding, so far that's still happening, but I'm no longer part of the bridal party, as Amy considers I'm no longer part of her trust circle. I'm still invited to the wedding, but as my husband's +1 because he's still part of the groomsmen. I'm glad I'm not a bridesmaid anymore, and I'm not sure if I'll be comfortable going to the wedding, because Amy and most her bridesmaid act as if I was trash-talking her to her fiancé when I haven't even spoke to him. PD. I wanted to thank all of those who supported me. I was really worried I had done something bad. But seeing so many people said that they do the same with their significant other or family, I feel much better. Update 2. Well, Reddit, hear the long-awaited update. In short, the wedding was called off. All this I've heard from my husband, from a few friends I still had in common with Amy, and from Amy's sister, who is very angry at Amy. Turns out that, as many had assumed, Amy wasn't being faithful. This past weekend, she went dancing with some friends and didn't came home until 5 a.m. Of course, she told her ex-fiancé that she had been with her friends all the time, and that's why she didn't answer her phone. Only for him to tell her that because she wasn't home and wasn't picking up the phone, around 2:30 a.m., he called one of her friends to ask to speak to Amy. And lo and behold, the friend had no idea where Amy was, because they had went dancing all right, but Amy canceled them and didn't went. So she insisted she was dancing, but with her sister and her sister's friends, and she went to bed. He called Amy's sister to ask her at what time had Amy left the club to come home, because he remembered the time Amy went dancing with me. And the sister said she hadn't seen Amy either. So he finally confronted Amy, and after more excuses, she admitted she was with a work friend. At first, she said it was just a friend that she didn't mention because it's a guy and her fiancé would be jealous. But after more fighting and sickle talk, she told him it was just a bit of pre-wedding fun, nothing serious, and that it wasn't cheating because they didn't had sex, and it was only flirting and hanging out, alone at his apartment. So he called off the wedding because he doesn't approve this kind pre-wedding fun. He is staying with some friends, and she is calling everyone she can think of to ask us to talk to him to get the wedding back on. Story 2. Am I the a-hole for giving my gluten-free mother gluten without telling her? Post. So my mother and I don't have a great relationship. Throughout my life, she has pushed all kinds of fad diets, self-help flavored fads, and even conversion therapy via the troubled teen industry on me. She's never apologized for any of it, despite me telling her how much it all messed me up. I still haven't mustered the guts up to go no contact because she's still married to my dad, who I do get along with and generally like. Well, I recently moved to a new place in a really nice area because I just got a really nice new job. Suddenly, my mom really wants to come and visit and see me. I do my best to make up excuses, but she pushes so hard that eventually I cave. One of the things I've been doing since moving into my new place is a lot of cooking because I have a nice big kitchen all to myself. I love weird food and finding new ways to get protein in my diet without using meat. Something I've had a lot of fun making lately is latiao. It's probably not weird to some people, but to my sheltered American self, it was funky as hell, and I loved the idea of it. So I started making it from scratch and discovered that I love it. Well, my mom and dad got here yesterday afternoon/evening and settle in, and we start talking about dinner. As usual, Mom has to pick after looking at online menus for a couple hours to make sure they fit with her dietary requirements. She ends up picking a vegan restaurant that's across town, but she's just so tired from the drive up, she can't fathom getting back in the car. So Dad and I agree to go pick it up while she rests. Driving across my new city is a long process, which I told her ahead of time, and it's a little over an hour later when we get home with the vegan, gluten-free food she wanted. She's not vegan, but she is adamantly gluten-free and has been for a few years now. We get inside, and as I am opening the food in the kitchen, I notice the Pyrex Snapware container of latiao that was in my fridge is now empty in my sink. She even dumped out the sauce that I'd been soaking them in. I asked her if she'd eaten something out of my fridge while we were gone, and she said that yes, she had eaten some chicken because she was getting lightheaded from hunger, but it was terrible and she was so ready for some real food. Now, this is where I might have been the asshole. Instead of telling her what she had actually eaten, I just rolled my eyes and dished up the food for everyone, and we ate. She continued to remark about how bad and oily the chicken was, and how relieved she was to finally eat something substantial throughout the rest of the evening. My dad kept trying to change the subject, and she kept coming back to it. I finally snapped when she brought it up again first thing this morning when I was picking them up from their hotel. I asked them where they wanted to go for breakfast, and my mom made a joke about not wanting me to cook them breakfast because she didn't want more oily chicken or something to that effect. I finally said, "Mom, that was homemade latiao, and I don't understand why you ate all of it if you hated it so much." She asked me what latiao is, and I explained that it's just vital wheat gluten and water steamed and soaked in sauce. I practically watched as her face dropped, and sure enough, within 30 minutes, her stomach was killing her, and she was having difficulty breathing and needed to go to the emergency room. The whole time we were there, she went on and on to the nurses and doctors about how I'd fed her gluten and not told her until it was too late for her to take her medicine, and crying because now the whole trip was ruined. Mind you, this is the hospital where I work. My dad pulled me aside to tell me he was disappointed that I hadn't spoken up last night, and how what I'd done not only hurt my mother's feelings, but also put her health and safety at risk. He asked me to go home and think about my actions and give my mother some space. And now I'm just sitting here alone in my cool new place, feeling like a dick and super anxious about what work is going to be like next week. I'm torn because I don't think it's my fault that she ate my food without talking to me first. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't omit the information about what she'd eaten because I was pissed at her and just didn't want to discuss it further. I also didn't expect it to make her so sick. So am I the a-hole? Now for the update. Just got home. So after everything went down this morning, I went back to the hospital to check on my parents. My mom was sleeping and still in the ED, and so I got to talk to my dad and the doctor a bit. My dad still thought I should apologize. I told him I would when she woke up. When I talked to the doctor a bit, I started asking about testing. I asked if they'd done a test for the specific kind of immunoglobulin present in celiac when someone has gluten, and she said she actually hadn't needed to because apparently my mom had that test done in the past with her PCP. The doctor asked me if I worked in the medical field, and I told her that yes, I worked in the lab. She then volunteered a bit more information than she probably should have, but I'm glad she did because I feel a bit better. She had managed to get my mom's lab results faxed over and looked them over. Apparently, my mom was low enough that it was absolutely clear that my mother does not have celiac disease. The doctor had offered to refer her for a biopsy, which is standard procedure for confirmation of celiac, and my mother declined. I later confirmed with my dad that it was because she didn't think it was worth it to go through all the expense and pain of surgery to confirm something she already knows. Furthermore, according to the nurse, my mother was given lorazepam, which he told me was for her stomach pain and nausea. He actually put this in air quotes with his fingers. In case you are not familiar with lorazepam, it is a benzo that is also used as an antipsychotic, anti-anxiety sedative along with gastro symptoms. Apparently, the medicine my mom was talking about was some kind of holistic/herbal thing. Cherry on top is that the nurse is Chinese and loves Latiao, and I now have a new work friend. I thanked them for all their help, and they indicated that she was ready to be discharged. My dad was not inclined to wake her up, but I explained that there were other people waiting that needed to be seen, and they couldn't be seen if there were no open beds. I then asked the doctor if she could write my mom a script for more lorazepam, which she agreed to, which seemed to placate my dad. I wheeled my mom out to my car. She was high as hell and going on and on about how she couldn't believe that I'd poisoned her, and if I wasn't her daughter, I'd be going to prison. I just apologized. Didn't offer any excuses. When I got them to their hotel, and my mom was waiting on a couch in the lobby while my dad grabbed her bags from my car, I told my dad it was probably better if they just go home. I'm not gonna lie, I got a little emotional. He agreed. So yeah. Based on the lab work and the way the ED staff were acting, I'm convinced my mom was faking for sympathy and attention. Not that it matters, because my dad will always support her no matter what. I'm never having them over again. Story 3. I found out I have a sister, and she told me a dark secret about our family that I can't tell anyone about. I, F24, recently found out I had a sister no one knew about on my dad's side. Backstory. My dad and I have a bad relationship. If what you call meeting the man only once in your life a relationship to begin with. My mom and him were seeing each other back in the day, and once she found out she was pregnant, he basically left after she denied his request to abort me. Fast forward 13 years and on and off contact with him, for most of it, I found my aunt on Facebook and sent her a message. It would be 3 years before she actually saw it, and come to find out, he never told his side of the family I existed. After a paternity test and some awkward conversations, I was welcomed into that side of the family and actually grew close to a lot of the people on my dad's side of the family. Specifically my aunt, his sister, who I just clicked with on a spiritual level, and she was honestly my biggest supporter during the very stressful and anxious time of getting to know that side of the family. During this time, there was a lot of pressure from his side of the family on me and him to have a relationship, especially from my grandparents. It's not that I didn't try, but it honestly felt like he only put in enough effort to please his parents. I could go more in detail, but this would end up being a book. Years later, after realizing the type of man my father was and how immature he was, I decided to be the one to sit him down and tell him how I felt. Like I couldn't trust him and that I was tired of the on and off contact and I didn't want a relationship with him. It took me weeks of stressful decision making to come to this conclusion, and honestly, it was a very emotional talk for me and helped me heal some wounds from my childhood. I always thought when I was a kid, what's wrong with me? Or why didn't he want me? But as an adult, I see now some people just don't want to be parents. I thought that was the end, that I could move on. A couple months later, I got a call from my grandfather telling me I had a sister. I was shocked. It's definitely not what I was expecting, but I wasn't just going to write her off. I had always wanted a sister, and while I knew we couldn't have the relationship I dreamed about, I was honestly excited to talk to her. After talking with my grandparents and other minor drama, I'm not going to include lol. I was able to actually speak to her on the phone for the first time. The conversation did not go as I expected. I expected small talk. I knew our father would come up eventually, and I made a promise to myself that I wouldn't try to sway her relationship with him. If she asked, I would answer her questions truthfully, but her relationship and what she decided with him was her own business. The topic came up. She asked if I had a relationship. I said no. She asked why. I explained that I personally had trust issues with him, and I decided I didn't want him in my life. After some more talk on the topic, she sounded nervous and said she wanted to tell me something. She proceeded to tell me that her mom ended confessing that she wasn't 100% sure who the father was at first, and she was hoping it wasn't my father, because he was the man who had roofied her and took advantage of her at a party once. To say I was floored was an understatement. Honestly, I had no idea how to respond as she continued to talk about it. I just kept saying, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry," and I don't know what to say. Apparently, her mother was seeing a man at the time, and she was with her friends at a club bar one night when this happened. She was hoping it was with the guy she was seeing at the time, but apparently not. They, I guess, broke up before she found out she was pregnant, and by then she didn't really know who the father was and didn't really want to address it with either guy. The only reason my sister was able to confirm it was when she did an ancestry DNA test and matched with a great aunt of mine. The conversation ended with me asking if she was going to tell the family and saying I believed her and offered support on whatever she decided to do. She said her mom didn't want her to. I told her that I wouldn't tell anyone if she didn't want me to, and she agreed to not tell anyone. Honestly, for a couple weeks after that, I was emotionally twisted. Yes, I know she could have lied, but I honestly believe her, and I'm an innocent until proven guilty kind of girl. My biggest things were the implications of this. My father is a bartender. He was when her mom and him met, and he is still one to this very day. How many girls has he done this to? Does this mean I might have other siblings? I was also questioning why she told me something like this to a person who is basically a stranger. I was freaking out about all of it, and honestly, this knowledge she gave me felt like a burden because I couldn't do anything about it or really talk to anyone. I got so stressed, I ended up talking to my mom about it because she does not communicate with that side of my family, and I needed someone I could talk to. I ended up talking to my sister again and getting more clarification on why she told me. She said she had honestly just found out from her mother and was struggling with it. After what I said about my relationship with our father, she said she felt like she could talk to me. We had a long talk, and I reassured her that I would be here for her, and if she did decide to tell the family, I would have her back. I know if she did tell them, that it would immediately cause chaos and a feud, and she's aware of that too. She said she had been dreaming of having more family since she was little, and while she did not want a relationship with our father, she did want one with the family. What I'm struggling with is the fact that my father is a rapist, because while we can call it drugging, that is what he did to her mother. He raped her. I'm struggling with the fact that I can't tell anyone on that side of the family this huge secret, especially my aunt, who I know would kill her brother in a heartbeat. I'm struggling with the fact that there might be other women out there he has done this to, and maybe even still doing it to. I don't know how to move forward. It's my sister's story, and I can't tell it to our family, but knowing this is twisting me up inside. As of now, my father has been practically MIA and is refusing to talk to our sister. If he even remembers what he did, I don't know.